always be first. Those who are doing their jobs justly don't mind being held accountable. But those who are not acting justly avoid accountability at all costs. There is a crisis in our country. There's a crisis in Nashville. Even though the city is supposedly booming, but it's not booming for all. Just ask those who can't afford to live in Nashville due to the lack of affordable and workforce housing. Ask those who are living below the poverty line. Ask those who are fearful of a police stop. Ask those who are not making a living wage. Ask those whose children are being disproportionately disciplined and expelled from school. Ask those who are being intimidated and justly deported. And ask those who face voter suppression and gerrymandering tactics. It is NORA's continual goal to organize and equip people to be advocates and activists for justice. Let's give hope to the hopeless and power to the powerless. The power of justice is greater than injustice. Let us strive to rebuild trust by passionately challenging and changing the system of injustice to one of justice for all. Let those being deprived see there are those fighting to change injustice to justice. Encourage those in the grips of despair not to give up. Let's continue to fight victories and win those victories over injustice. So let us continue to vote and say no to injustice. Amen.
As our first presentation comes up, we just want to thank our elected officials who are here today. I know we have some state officials, as well as many of our county officials and school board representatives. If you all want to stand, we can wave. We thank you for being here. So thank you all for being here. Thank you so much. We also have an important announcement. Someone in a white Toyota with a Tennessee license plate, 210BZV, we won't all look at you, but they really need you to move your car with lots of exclamation marks. So it may get towed. So if you have a white Toyota, sneak out the back.
Thank you, Marley. Well, I'll introduce myself. I'm Terry Spitalnik. I teach sociology at Vanderbilt, but I'm here today because I worship at the Temple Congregation Ohabah Shalom. Big shout out. Well, if Chris has a microphone, he's going to introduce himself.
Okay, hello, my name is Chris Gill. I am a paraprofessional at Electoral Schools, and I'm also a member of SEIU.
Okay, so we're here this afternoon to let you know how Metro's property tax rate created the current budget shortfall.
Many of you will remember there was a big conversation last budget cycle regarding how could there be such a big shortfall when Nashville's in a boom. It's a good question. There was a big debate about the property tax rate and the recent appraisal. Ultimately, the mayor and city council decided to leave the property tax rate alone and make do with current city revenues. We're going to give you a better understanding of why NOAA thinks that we should reconsider this decision.
Like any budget, Metros consist of money in, revenues, and money out, expenses. Ideally, revenues cover expenses plus something set aside for a rainy day. When that doesn't happen, we call it a revenue shortfall. Revenue shortfall. Notice that we talk about the problem of not enough money coming in, but we have solved it by cutting expenses. Let's look instead at money coming in, starting with revenue sources. We bump up so Tennessee law only gives us a few options for bringing money in. We bump up the state sales tax by 2% to get about 1/5 of our revenue. Grants and contributions bring in another 19%. Another 15% comes from things like licensing fees. But Metro's largest revenue source by far is one that we're here to talk about today, namely
property taxes, which bring in almost half of the revenue for Metro government.
So it's a big part of the budget. Property taxes are paid by homeowners, and they're paid by commercial property owners who pay a little bit bigger share than homeowners. Either way, the tax rate is applied to a property's assessed values. The owners pay the taxes, and that's where we get the property tax revenues. But where does that property tax rate come from?
It's a good question. Every year, the city goes through a budgeting process. The mayor proposes a budget and a tax rate to create enough revenue to fund that budget. Those revenues are projected on the projected property tax rate. Then Metro Council considers the budget, and sometimes they make a substitute budget, sometimes they make amendments. They then have to approve both the budget and the tax rate that fully funds the budget.
So how could we have a shortfall? Well, every 4 years, property values and tax rates are both updated. The last time this happened was 2016. The Davidson County Assessor's Office determined what everyone's property was worth in the current market, and the assessed values were adjusted to reflect the reappraisal. Well, most property values had gone up, sometimes way up, since the last appraisal back in 2012. So property tax revenue is based on higher assessed values times the tax rate. So that means more money coming into the budget, right? You would think, but you would not be correct. Well, no. State law says property tax revenue after the reappraisal cannot be more than it was before the reappraisal. So no revenue can be raised as a direct result of the appraisal. Later on, there could be a public hearing. Metro could change the tax rate, but at that moment in time, we had to, values had gone up, thank you. Values had gone up, so the rate had to come down.
Now, at that point, the mayor and the council have to decide if they think there's enough money to fund the city, because cities grow. And as we all know, Nashville's been growing. With a growing city, we have an increased need for services and funding. Nashville's grown a lot in the last 4 years, last 10 years.
So.
Now, before this reappraisal was even finished, Mayor Berry decided she was not going to change the tax rate. She noted in her address to the Rotary Club in January 2017 that the property tax rate would likely go down to be the lowest since 1984. What she did not mention in her comments was that as a result of that low property tax rate, the very next year, city had a major shortfall and the property tax rate had to be readjusted.
So it had been adjusted in the past. It wasn't this time. While the reappraisal rate was still going on, before knowing the results, the tax rate was allowed to fall to the lowest rate in the entire existence of metropolitan Nashville. That's 55 years. That's longer than the entire existence of many people in this room. That led to odd real-life consequences. Some people owed more tax before, some people owed less. And if you look at the color-coded map, yes, the redder the district, the more the average tax bill went up. The bluer the district, shown on the map, the more its average tax bill went down. The impact wasn't the same for every household in the district, but generally that's how it worked out. How much more people paid depended on the percentage increase in the property value. So here are a couple of examples. Say the market value of your $75,000 home had gone up by another $75,000, doubled in value. Up goes your property tax bill by $337. But somebody else, say your $600,000 home went up by $100,000, which I calculate as larger than $75,000 in the previous scenario. Well, that property bill went down by more than $1,200. That is out of whack and unfair.
Remember, this isn't a hypothetical. Okay, we have Johnny and Chris here to tell you about what happened to them.
Hello, everyone. My name is Johnny Davis. I work at Nashville General Hospital, and I live in East Nashville near Douglas Avenue. In 2017, my home's value increased from $92,700 to $189,900. That's great. But however, my taxes increased by $450 per year. Now, I understand that the funds raised support important institutions like Nashville General Hospital. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Like as importantly, our public schools also need funding. I don't mind paying my share of taxes because the money used to ensure that this great city continues to grow.
Thanks. I'm Chris Moth. My wife and I have lived in Green Hills for about 30 years. My son just graduated from Hillsborough High School last year. I've got 2 more kids coming up through public school. Director Joseph has a spectacular vision for what he wants to do for all our kids in this city, and you've helped him achieve that, but we're starving him of his ability, the fuel, the money he needs to implement some of that. We need to get behind him. In 2016, my house was appraised at $650,000. It's a nice McMansion there in Green Hills. And then in 2017, they bumped it up 20% to what, $785,000. At the same time, my taxes were dropped about 15%. They were about $7,400, and now they're about $6,200. There's no way I can look at that, knowing how much it costs to educate our children and all the other things our city does, and call that fair. I should be paying significantly more to help support the services in the city. I never asked for a tax rate. We need to get this sorted out as soon as we can. I'm completely with Johnny on that.
Thank you to Johnny and Chris for telling your story, and to extend on what Chris was saying, it gets better. I think most people weren't aware how the system works, and now let's take a look at commercial properties. A place we all know and love, Opry Mills Mall. Commercial properties were also impacted by the reappraisal. Before the appraisal, Opry Mills' value was $225 million, and they paid $4.07 million in taxes. After the reappraisal, the property value went up. Great, went up to $300 million. Their property taxes went down to $3.8 million. Now, with the previous formula, they should have been paying around $5.47 million in taxes. Instead, their value went up $75 million, and their taxes were reduced by $282,000. And Johnny got a tax increase.
Well, here's another example. Before the reappraisal, the U.S. Bank building down at 1 Nashville Place had a value of almost $61 million. Their tax bill was $1.15 million. After the reappraisal, valuation had grown to almost $90 million. Yes, their tax bill did go up, but only by a couple $100,000. 2 orders of magnitude, I think, maybe 3. Taxes went up by less than 2% for a 147% rise in value. Out of whack, unfair. They gained almost $29 million in value and are only paying a little less than $20,000 per year in taxes. So we think that most people were not aware of how this works. To recap, increase in property tax rate ruled out by Mayor Barry in 2016. Any future public debate that year also ruled out. Knowing how the reappraisal would affect revenue, still months away at that time. Knowing what expenses would need to be covered, also months away. And the property tax rate, well, travel back in time to 1963, the birth of Metro Nashville, and you still won't find a lower rate. Travel to every major county in Tennessee, and you won't find a lower rate. Travel west on I-40. Compare the property tax rate in Shelby County with the rate in Davidson County. Ours does not reach their halfway mark. So this budget shortfall caused by a change in how we collect revenue, specifically property taxes, 46% of our revenues. It was not caused by overspending. And you will see this as Chris lets you know what some of the spending that was cut.
The results of this decision: Metro school system is underfunded by over $37 million. Plus, we lost out on state funding because we have the ability to collect property taxes, and because we didn't fully exploit that, we actually lost state funding on that. Hardworking teachers and support staff felt the school funding shortfall the most when they didn't get raises that we were promised. Okay? In fact, more than 1,000 employees earn less than $15 an hour, include yours truly. I'll tell you what I make. I make $13 an hour. Okay? I am an officer in the military. I have 6 years of college. I have FEMA certification, and I received $13 an hour. And that was after my raise. Try living on that in Nashville. Okay. Another broken promise was cost of living adjustments, which were supposed to repay the sacrifices that Metro employees had to make during the Great Recession. These employees include our police officers, our firefighters, 911 dispatchers, library staff, and many of the public services who provide the valuable services that our city needs. Families budgeted for these increases because they were promised. And the promise was broken to us. On top of that, a partial hiring freeze means that we have to do more for less because we're understaffed. And at the same time, big commercial properties like Opry Mills are reaping all the benefits and rewards of this boom by not being asked to pay their fair share of taxes.
So I can tell from your applause that you don't think we overspent. We were underfunded. The consequences that Chris just described are economic equity issues faced by hardworking individuals because of a preventable and fixable revenue shortfall. But the effects go beyond economic equity. The revenue shortfall also affects affordable housing. The revenue shortfall also affects criminal justice. The revenue shortfall also affects all three of NOAA's key issues and so much more. During the debate on last year's budget, Metro Council members decried a lack of public engagement. Well, that engagement starts now, this afternoon. This very afternoon, we begin our robust public engagement to demand the budget that Nashville deserves.
Thank you.
Our work and your prompt response to requests for action, leading to emails, phone calls to your elected representatives, meeting your elected representatives, attending Metro Council meetings, Metro Planning Commission meetings, and meetings of other stakeholders in our community, and testifying at these has led to a number of successes which are listed on page 5 in your program booklet. My name is Paulette Coleman, and I have been active with NOAA since it was being formed 5 years ago. I participate in NOAA through my church, Lee Chapel African Methodist Episcopal Church, which is a founding member of NOAA. In chairing the Affordable Housing Task Force over the last 4 years, I have worked with scores of people in every quadrant of the city. Our work and your responses have led to action, and we are most appreciative. We would like to thank the Metro Human Relations Commission, which has developed a second pamphlet with the facts we are about to share. If you would like more information on the Affordable Housing Task Force or affordable housing or the lack thereof, please consult NOAA's website that is listed in our program booklet. Affordable housing helps establish a sense of safety and stability. Families are raised in houses. Children gain their grounding and footing in homes. According to 2015 data, in Davidson County, nearly a quarter of homeowners and a staggering 49% of renters are paying more than they can afford for housing. Affordability is paying no more than 30% of your income on housing. If you pay more than that, you are considered cost burden, and that's by a federal definition. Since 2011, rents have risen roughly 64%, while average annual wages have grown by only 14%, and in some instances have been stagnant. About 35% of all jobs in the Nashville region are in sectors where half of the people make less than $15 an hour. That translates to $30,000 a year. And most national estimates have indicated that you really need as much as $80,000 to live comfortably in Nashville. That, of course, is debatable depending on how you calculate it. My colleagues will now ask questions and ask the mayor to limit his response to 2 minutes, as we may want to follow up on some of his responses. I have appreciated his willingness to dialogue with us and to answer questions. And now we have our first questioner. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. My name is Regina Davis. My first NOAA meeting was a District 1 council debate in 2015. That NOAA experience so reignited my desire for community activism that I went back to my church, Metropolitan Interdenominational Church, and suggested that we become a member of NOAA, which we did in 2016. I have been attending the NOAA Affordable Housing Task Force since 2015. Mayor Briley, we need you to address the issues of housing affordability at the root cause, creating long-term solutions for increasing the housing supply, preserving our existing units, expanding housing opportunities, and addressing systemic failures in the rental market. In the past, Metro government has organized all sectors of the city to take on big projects like the convention center and a transit plan and a soccer stadium. Will you pull together key leaders from business, government, and the community to create a comprehensive, affordable housing plan within 12 months to engage the public and private sectors? We must have a plan that tells us and includes where we are as a city with affordable housing, what our goals and timelines are, and how to secure the needed resources and the framework for decision-making that will get us to these goals. Sir, will you do this?
Well, how can I say no?
We will hold you to that.
up my whole 2 minutes and then get to the answer. I know it. Before I answer the question, I'm going to take a moment of personal privilege and say I'm glad to be here and be held accountable. It is certainly a part of the job of being mayor to stand in front of the people who he represents or she represents and be held accountable for the failures and also be, I think, occasionally rewarded for the successes of the community. And it's my honor to be here at this moment and do that. Additionally, I appreciate what was said about what happened in Pittsburgh yesterday. It's I think a hallmark of our place that in a moment of hate somewhere else, just the very next day we came to this room, and even though we might not agree about everything, and I am not going to satisfy you on every one, I can tell you that in advance, we all come here in a spirit of love and trying to move forward as a community. I share Noah's desire to address the root causes of displacement and gentrification and homelessness in our community. I share that sense deeply. And I believe that, number one, we do need to have a concrete, objective, reasonable, rational, reachable plan to deal with affordability in our community. I, however, believe that the root cause is not just the cost of housing. It is not just the cost of housing. It is also 40 years of wage stagnation in our community, in our country, that started in an era where most of us were not even active in politics. And so, as much as we work on affordable housing, we have to also work on wage stagnation, which is critically important to changing the direction of our community.
Hi, my name is Danielle Fletcher, and I moved to Nashville over 6 years ago and was just shocked at how expensive housing was, especially as a young single person. I'm not a member of any NOAA member groups. However, I found NOAA and have been attending meetings of the Affordable Housing Task Force for over 2 years. About 20% of the people on our task force are not affiliated with a member organization, so please know that everyone is welcome to participate. Mayor, we recognize that there is no one policy or subsidy that can fully address the affordable housing situation in Nashville. We know we need a diverse set of tools and programs, but we also know that there is no greater need than to identify a long-term, dedicated, and recurring funding source for affordable housing that is commensurate with the need as well as the prosperity in the city. Will you do this?
I agree, and I share the belief that in order for this community to make a difference when it comes to affordable housing, we have to be persistent. And during the Purcell administration, the city was very focused on this issue. We got a little bit off focus, probably because we were in the middle of a big recession, the Great Recession, and housing costs weren't really rising like they were before. I do believe that if we're going to look back in 10 and in 20 years and say, oh, we stood up and did the right thing, that we have to have a consistent source of revenue. Now, this year, even in a very tight budget, we kept the $10 million for the Barnes Fund to keep us moving forward. We also, in the capital spending plan that the council approved just a couple of weeks ago, continue to spend $25 million on affordable housing that's going to be put out to an RFP, and we're waiting to hear the good ideas in the community about how we can build housing in this community that is needed, especially for people at 0 to 30% of AMI, because that is really where the true crisis is, the truest crisis is in our community. I am in favor of finding some sort of way to identify a source of revenue that can meet that goal of persistence. However, as you have seen from the very long presentation about, and very detailed and very thorough and better than I could do, presentation on our tax structure, we are limited in terms of how we can tax. And we will probably have to go to the state legislature to do that. And I am ready, willing, and able to go up to the legislature with NOAA to create a source of revenue that is persistent, that will not go away, so that we can focus on affordable housing for the next decades.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Kimberly Wright, and I attend Gordon Memorial United Methodist Church, where I first heard about NOAA. 2 years ago, I decided to join the Affordable Housing Task Force. I have a set of 11-year-old twins, a 14-year-old, and we live in North Nashville, where we experience changes to housing's availability, affordability daily. The works and efforts of NOAA are great influences. They help me empower, educate, and advocate for my family. That's a powerful impact for me as a single mom and a registered voter. Mayor Briley, in order to preserve our availability to develop affordable housing in the future, Metro needs to extend the operational support of the Community Land Trust for 3 years and create a municipal land bank with clearly defined policies and procedures. This will ensure that as property values continue to increase, that there will still be land available for building new affordable housing. Will you do this?
I share the sense and the belief that we've got to extend the community land bank. It's totally clear to me that that's something we have to do. The Community Land Trust. I was on the board of the Housing Fund for a decade before I became mayor, so I'm completely committed to making sure that we focus on those kind of efforts going forward. We haven't waited for the request to look at how Metro disposes of land that it controls, because we frankly own more land that is potentially useful for these purposes than probably anybody else in town. And so internally in the mayor's office, we are in the midst of discussions about how to create an objective, understandable, transparent, and fair process to make sure that as Metro land becomes available, everybody has a chance to participate. It's used in a way that is effective and makes a difference in the community for decades to come.
Thank you, Mayor. If I were to summarize, it seems that you have the passion or the willingness, and you at some level enjoy and appreciate the issues that we have raised. However, we still didn't hear what you would do in terms of the plan within a 12-month period, and if there are ways that NOAA can help, if you would articulate those. It's good to have the passion, but we have to have some action behind the passion, and we appreciate your comments and your willingness to engage.
I think I ran out of time on the first question, or I would have gotten to a better answer on the 12-month, but I ran out of time. I don't think it will take 12 months. As you know, as part of the unprecedented transition that we've had in executive leadership in the city, we've also had some significant transition in terms of staffing in the mayor's office. Yes. And so it's slowed us down. We were pretty far along the process on this, and without some staffing changes, we probably would have already announced something very like this. So it won't take us 12 months. We will definitely get with all of the interested parties in town and move forward in this regard. I will say, I don't think we need another study. I don't think we need any. Amen. We just need action.
Thank you, Mayor. If you want to sit, the Economic Equity and Jobs Task Force is going to come up. We'll have another short presentation.
Hello, guys. How y'all doing tonight? this afternoon. My name is Shay Marika. Everybody calls me Shay. I am the PR and social media chair for NOAA. So all those posts y'all be seeing on Facebook and Twitter, sometimes that's me. It's glad to see y'all in person. Did you want to introduce yourself, Ethan?
Yeah, sure. My name is Ethan Link, and I'm a proud member of Laborers Local 386, and also a member of the Economic and Equity and Jobs Task Force.
And also, I represent SEIU. Woo-hoo. Over the past year, the Economic Equity and Jobs Task Force has worked on several key issues. With our allies in the Metro Council, we passed the Do Better bill. Council members who supported that bill, please stand. Thank you, thank you. Big businesses seeking property tax breaks or cash grants from the city will now have to share basic information on the number of jobs they'll create, the wages and benefits, their workforce development and apprenticeship plans, and how many jobs will actually be filled by Nashville residents. The bill will make sure that a company's past safety and wage records will be reviewed when applying for these public subsidies. The bill has the potential to increase transparency and help Metro Council make better economic decisions on behalf of all of Nashville.
Absolutely, and as we've been saying for years, there's other issues that are important in economic equity. Nashville's workforce development pipeline is broken. We have had a development boom, which is bringing a lot of work, a lot of people to our city at a rapid pace. But it's not resulting in the pathways to good career jobs for Nashvillians that were promised. There is a reported labor shortage on construction sites across Nashville. So contractors go and hire out-of-town labor instead of training people right here in Nashville. Meanwhile, over the past 2 years, there were more than 16 construction fatalities in Nashville on job sites, hundreds of injuries, many of which were completely unreported. There's a multi-million-dollar wage theft claim against contractors who work on luxury hotels across our city. That's why when NOAA held an apprenticeship and union trades expo, over 100 people attended. Several were put to work immediately. And many others picked up applications for local apprenticeship programs. For the first time in recent memory, folks in a high poverty neighborhood were given solid good jobs and apprenticeships within their grasp. This is an important step because the jobs that are usually available in these parts of town are scarce, low wage, and have no career ladder. But together we showed that local people are interested in high road construction and hospitality jobs. But we have to continue to make this connection. The Economic and Equity Jobs Task Force has also been very busy as a key member of a coalition called Stand Up Nashville. This coalition was created so we can have private agreements between citizens and the developers that are changing and growing our city. Stand Up Nashville negotiated an unprecedented community benefits agreement with Nashville Soccer Holdings covering the operations of the MLS Stadium and the buildings on the 10-acre development around it. It was a long, intense process, and all the people, and it took a lot of learning and a lot of long hours. So first off, we want to thank everyone who came out to Metro Council, many of you in this room, and stayed until late hours to make sure that this happened. We also want to thank the neighbors who came out to the community meetings, who made their voices heard. Started in this very room with neighbors around this church who came out and said, this is what we want in our community. We want to thank the 31 Metro Council members who signed a letter demanding the CBA be part of the project. And thank Mayor Briley for his support and for calling it a new way of doing business in Nashville. It is, and we couldn't be prouder. This CBA guarantees $15.50 per hour as a starting wage for stadium service workers. That's the highest of any venue in the city. It guarantees 20% of the housing will be affordable and workforce, with a special emphasis on 3-bedroom units for families. We won a sliding scale child care facility because when the folks came here on March 22nd, that was one of the number one things the neighborhood said they wanted, was affordable child care. We got a commitment to use high road construction contractors on the 10-acre developments construction. A targeted hire program that'll connect Nashvillians directly with those good jobs, and micro-unit retail spaces for small businesses and artisans that will be at reduced rental rates. But we know our work isn't over, not even close. Now comes the task of implementing the CBA. We are continuing to work with Nashville Soccer Holdings through a community advisory committee to assist, monitor, and enforce the pieces that the developer committed to. Now, these victories all happened because citizens like you and I organized, we showed up, and we demanded more from our city. So thank you, Noah, again, for being part of Nashville's history.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mrs. A.C. Atre Molly Arthur Snodgrass. I'm a proud member of the SEIU Local 205. I'm an exceptional ed paraprofessional. Undoubtedly, we are so proud of the victories that Noah has helped to accomplish. We also have so much more that must be done. Our poverty rate continues to be over 14%. That is 98,000 of our friends, family, and neighbors that are being affected. We are a hard-working city. Many of us are working 2 or 3 jobs just to take care of our families. The unemployment rates are historically low, which means that as a city, we are getting paid pennies for each of those jobs, while developers continue to prosper. It is past time for all of Nashville to experience the prosperity boom, not just watch their success on television. One of the ways that this prosperity boom can be shared with all Nashvillians is through the property tax adjustment. As we've just heard, this rate is a clear measure of equity in our metro budget. We are also concerned that developers are getting away with deals that leave our fellow Nashvillians behind, going as far as changing the terms of their tax deals as it suits them, and only them. This is why the community benefit agreement is so very important. It's signed, it's binding, it's real. It isn't a one-time fix. It is a new and far better way to do business moving forward. We fought long and hard for this new standard, so we must defend this new standard. We refuse to go back to business as usual.
My name is Susie Reese. I'm a member of Christ Church Cathedral. Before we go any further, are there any representatives from Mortenson Messer in the audience? Okay. Once again, the construction group who stands to profit from building the soccer stadium has declined our invitations to meet. This is what we mean when we say business as usual. Since the passage of the community benefit agreement that cleared the path for this stadium, Stand Up Nashville has reached out to Mortenson Messer to get these same commitments to use responsible contractors with signed agreements. In fact, when the company submitted their stadium bid to Metro, their workforce development section included all of our group's names without our knowledge, utilizing our reputations to help win their bid. We, the taxpayers, the homeowners, the workers of Davidson County, are buying a $275 million stadium from Mortenson Messer. And Metro was promised a stadium that would have Noah's participation, Sun's participation, and Central Labor Council Union apprenticeship programs. But we stand here today unsure where this partnership stands. Working with our group means having real agreements with the unions that give our neighbors pathways out of poverty. It does not mean holding another dead-end job fair. It does not mean sending us to temp agencies and paying us cash under the table. It does not mean business as usual.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ann Barnett from the Central Labor Council. Thank you. And so, we stand here today wondering how Mortenson Messer plans to accomplish the following 3 commitments that they themselves wrote into their bid. The first one being to create meaningful employment. The second one, work with NOAA and Stand Up Nashville for the recruitment and referral of workers. The third commitment that they wrote, to partner with the Central Labor Council to use union apprenticeship programs. To us, these aren't just words on a flyer. They are promises that must be kept. But it's going to take y'all. It's going to take all of us. It's going to take the community to make sure those promises are kept, right? While we are going to be working proudly under this hard-fought, history-making community benefit agreement on the 10-acre development, Mortenson Messer will be literally right next to us, directing over 500 more jobs on the stadium that unfortunately are not covered under the CBA. But we know, without real signed agreements, we know what will happen, right? It'll be business as usual. In the Nashville construction market, what does business as usual mean? It means that temp agencies like Staff Zone and Trojan that steal wages. It means that labor brokers who are here today and then they're gone on payday. It means dead-end jobs with no benefits. And it means more workers potentially killed on construction sites. And what's worse is that the construction manager seems to have no problem agreeing to CBAs and workforce development agreements in other cities. The majority partner, Mortenson Construction, has built half a dozen stadiums under real agreements across the country, from the Vikings football stadium in Minneapolis, the Bucks Stadium in Milwaukee, other MLS stadiums even in St. Paul. All of those had real workforce agreements signed before ground was broke. So why is Nashville getting left out? Don't we deserve real careers in Nashville? Don't we deserve safety and dignity on the job? Don't we deserve health care, union apprenticeships, and good pay for honest work? Do we deserve business as usual? No.
Good afternoon, beautiful people. So thankful to our team here laying out our victories and also our concerns. And so that leads us into our questions for the mayor. My name is Suzanne Johnson, and I'm a member of Edge Hill United Methodist Church. I don't know where my Edge Hillians are out there. I'm also the co-chair of the Economic Equity and Jobs Task Force, and I am so proud to work alongside this woman right here and everybody else who helps us out, working to make Nashville a more just community. So we're going to get to our questions, but I'm going to let this lady introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I want to take a quick second, and I want to say hello to Pastor John Faison. Thank you so much for letting us use your church again. This man has fought hard beside Noah and Stand Up Nashville through everything, so he is a pillar in this community, and we definitely appreciate you. My name is Odessa Kelly. Those who don't know, thank you. I am a member of Mount Zion Baptist Church, SCIU, Local 205, and I co-chair Stand Up Nashville with Ann Barnett. Hello, Mayor Briley. You look good over there. Got the suit, look, the purple matching for you know what to wear on Sunday, boy.
I don't know where you're going with that.
We're gonna
for a raise?
No, we're gonna stay on time, and we're gonna go ahead and start with these questions. Mayor Briley, will you commit to work with NOAA to facilitate a participatory budget process for the upcoming cycle. For example, hold town hall meetings in 4 quadrants of the city to elicit suggestions for inclusive budget conversations.
Thank you for the question. And let me start by saying I was sworn in March 6th, and within just a few weeks, we started the budget process for the city this year. And I sat through all of the budget hearings between the mayor and the department heads. And it was the first I sat through on the other side before and watched, but I'd never sat through as mayor, and I did not, frankly, find them particularly useful. It seemed a little bit too theatrical to me. So beginning even then, we started talking in the mayor's office about changing the process this budget cycle. So yes, but on top of that, so I think I have had either 8 or 9 town halls already in 8 months as mayor. So that's 1 a month essentially, and I intend to continue that process. We're working on a way to have more community participation, more understanding in the community about how the budget process works, and I commit to doing that in the coming budget cycle, and I commit to working with NOAA to establish a good way to do that in our community.
Thank you. We're off to a good start. Question number 2. Following the reappraisal, Mayor Barry and the council did not follow the historical practice of adjusting the property tax rate to meet city expenses. We know that from the presentation that was well done earlier this afternoon. That created the shortfall that you, Mayor Briley, inherited. Last year, the Metro Schools budget request was underfunded by $50 million, and the city broke a commitment made to teachers, firefighters, 911 dispatchers, police officers, and everyone else who keeps this city running. This budget crunch is happening at a time when the city is booming, and we are asking city employees to make the same sacrifices they made during the recession. Meanwhile, the commercial developers who would pay a majority of the property taxes are making windfall profits because of the decision to keep the rate so low. Will you commit to include a property tax rate adjustment for next year's budget to ensure the city is properly funded and that everyone, particularly those doing the best in this economy, are paying their fair share? If not, what is your plan to repair the public trust around this issue?
So let me start by saying I share the sense that last year's budget was an incredible disappointment. I think every time I've spoken about the budget, I have started by saying my number 1 priorities last year were to do the cost of living adjustment for employees and to fund Metro schools at their requested amount. So I am as disappointed in the budget, I think, as anybody in the room. I don't agree with entirely everything that's in there. But I'm not going to belabor that, because I think the sense of agreement is more important, that we all agree that something needs to change. But let me point out one thing that is already clear, I think, to everybody in the room. We had 2 people. We had Johnny Davis and Chris Moth come up and talk about their particular tax situation this last year. Mr. Davis's taxes went up. Mr. Moth's went down. If we raise taxes again this year, Mr. Davis will see his 2nd tax increase in 3 years, up over what he was paying before. Mr. Moth won't probably still get back to what he was paying before. That's going to be true for everybody in that red area on the map. They're going to get their 2nd tax increase. And those are the areas that are having the highest rate of gentrification in our community. Now, if we could just go tax every commercial business in town on its own, that would be a different story. But we can't. When we raise taxes, it has disparate impacts on disparate people. Mr. Davis would get his 2nd tax increase. Mr. Moth would still be back where he was before. And in commercial properties, just so you know, commercial properties include multifamily residential. So when a multifamily residential unit is paying taxes at a higher rate, and we raise their taxes, they're going to get hit again. So under those circumstances, I cannot agree to propose a property tax increase in the coming budget. Now, let me tell you how I think we do need to build trust. It was an unprecedented moment. It did not make sense in many respects. We have to live within our means. We have to do everything we possibly can to find revenue and resources for a cost of living adjustment and to fund Metro Public Schools. And that's what I'm working on right now. I'm going to go over my time on this one. I'll go under later. And let me say finally that last year, the only entity in our system that got new local revenue was Metro Nashville Public Schools. They lost $15 million in state revenue. They lost 15 in state. We filled that hole, plus we added $5 million in additional revenue to Metro Nashville Public Schools. Was it enough? No. But it demonstrates that it was the highest priority in our city this year. In a year where everybody else got cut, we did our best for Metro Nashville Public Schools. Was it enough? No. Am I satisfied? No. But we have to bring everybody along before we propose a tax increase in our community, and we are not there yet, in my judgment.
Well, unfortunately, we don't have a whole lot of time, but I would say that most of us agree that we should look at the best way to encourage our commercial partners in this city to pay a fair share of the revenue. When you look at those graphs, it's really unconscionable to see the fact that the number of businesses where their property value went up and their property tax.
But state law determines that. Nothing we can do locally will change that.
Thank you.
Well, all right then. Well, I guess we know where we stand as Metro employees and how we prioritize schools. We'll just move on to the third question. Mortensen and Messer use NOAA, Stand Up Nashville, and Central Labor Council's good names and reputations to promote their bid to build a Major League Soccer stadium without consulting with any of the above-mentioned organizations. We had reached out to Mortensen Messer. We did get a very bland email back in the last, or how should I say it in church, in the final hour, saying that it was very bleak, saying that they will work with us in the months to come. But that's not enough. We've reached out to them to discuss the standards we expect to see them uphold. If they claim that they have partnered with us, what will you do, Mayor Briley, to ensure that Mortensen and Messer will work in good faith with NOAA, Stand Up Nashville, and the Central Labor Council to hire responsible contractors and use apprenticeships to create pathways out of poverty?
I will do everything that I am legally allowed to do under state law. Now, you know what that means, because when you saw the ones that were up there, they were not right to work states. So we have limited capacity compared to a lot of other places where they can require labor agreements with contractors. We cannot do that. But so far, I have met with them 3 times face-to-face. I have directed them multiple times to meet with LIUNA to work through issues regarding the construction of the stadium, and I will meet with them again before it goes back to before the contract. The contract is not yet finally approved by the Sports Authority. There is no contract yet. I will meet with them again and push them even harder to reach an agreement with the LIUNA as it relates to construction of the stadium before the Sports Authority considers the contract.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Good afternoon. We are the Criminal Justice and Mass Incarceration Task Force, led by Kyle Mothershead and me, Linda Robinson, a member of Lee Chapel AME Church.
Our goal is to eliminate racial injustice within the justice system, specifically the mass incarceration of black men. You'll hear first from the School Discipline Reform Subcommittee, followed by Policing Reform, closing out our presentation. Now, for the past 3 years, we've partnered with Passage and MNPS to break the school-to-prison pipeline, with our most recent initiative being a push to eliminate the suspensions, expulsions, and arrest of our youngest and most vulnerable students, our babies in grades pre-K through 4th grade. I will now turn our presentation over to Molly Wilson, a member of our School Discipline Reform Subcommittee. She'll tell you more.
Thank you, Ms. Linda. Good afternoon. My name is Molly Wilson. I'm a member of the NOAA Criminal Justice Task Force and Edge Hill United Methodist Church. I'm also a teacher and a foster mom. I will give a brief overview of the school discipline policy NOAA supports and the data that led to our position. NOAA asks that no child from preschool through 4th grade receive an out-of-school suspension, expulsion, or arrest at school. Instead, the child will be referred to interventions such as mental health services or family-based programs. NOAA understands that there are some behaviors that critically affect the safety of students and staff. There are exceptions to this policy for what the MNPS Code of Conduct calls 500-level offenses. They're listed on this slide. Next, here are some data that support our policy. This graph represents the number of pre-K through 4th grade students suspended in MNPS over the last 3 school years, broken down by student race. 2 key points. First, there is a disproportionate representation of African American students across all 3 years. Second, there is a large number of students suspended each year. While suspensions have decreased, preschool and elementary school students are still hurt by exclusionary discipline practices. NOAA is aware that this policy change will require a commitment of resources and support for teachers, staff, children, and families. However, we believe that this is an investment our community needs in order to take responsibility for the safety and success of all our children in Nashville.
Thank you, Molly. My name is Byron Harvey. I'm a member of NOAA's Criminal Justice Task Force also. You've heard about the racial disparities in school discipline. That is the beginning of the school-to-prison pipeline. But we can break that pipeline if we focus on restorative practices and other discipline methods that solve problems instead of merely punishing students. So we've worked for 4 years getting commitments from school board members and meeting quarterly with Dr. Joseph, Director of Schools, and his administrative staff. In just this past year, we've held 8 community meetings about racial disparities in school discipline, pointing out the horrible data from individual schools and how restorative practices can make a difference. We've also held candidate forums for 3 school board districts. 2 years ago, we won 4 restorative practice trainers for the system. This year, we pushed Metro Council for sustainable funding for the school system, but in spite of the inadequate funding that actually came from Metro Council, Dr. Joseph worked with us to fund 24 additional positions for restorative practice and social emotional learning. Thank you, Dr. Joseph. We are now focused on the new policy you have just heard about. No suspensions, no expulsions, no arrests at school arrests rather, for pre-K through 4th grade. Working with MNEA and school board member Christian Buggs, we have listened to teachers and principals. We wanted to know what resources teachers would need to really make this policy work. Let the children come to me and do not forbid them. We must stop shoving children out of the door into the school-to-prison pipeline. Saving children is what we all want. It's just the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Byron. I am Eric Huth. I'm chair of NOAA's Student Discipline Reform Subcommittee. On August 14, NOAA, Passage, and other partners went to the school board to speak on the policy related to exclusionary discipline practices and in-school arrests. Among those who spoke was a parent, LaWanda McKinnon, who happens to be here today. Following a 1-minute video clip of her plea to the board, a junior from Hillsborough High School, Diana White, will ask questions of Dr. Joseph. Please play the video now.
Hello, my name is LaWanda McKinnon, and I want to say thank you for this opportunity to speak about something that has affected my family and is an extremely sensitive subject for me. So imagine a sense of pain, panic, fear, devastation, disbelief, embarrassment, helplessness, and then anger. These range of emotions describe the feelings I had when I witnessed my child in the back of a Metro police car. In the 4th, 6th, and 7th grade, I hope that sinks in. What makes this even more real for me is in 2012, at age 7 years old, my child was given a diagnosis of a serious mental health illness. At that point, it was fight or flight for me. I chose to fight for my son's rights and fight for his opportunity to have a free, fair, and appropriate education. So it is quite discouraging that when you have a student with an alternative learning style and you have given the administrators sufficient and accurate information to better support your student, the immediate reaction should not be to pick up the phone to call the police. Hello, my name is LaWanda.
Hi, my name is Diana White, and I'm a junior at Hillsborough High School, where I'm on the restorative practice student-led team. Is ending suspensions, expulsions, and in-school arrests in pre-K through grade 4 a priority for you? If so, what is the strategy and the timeline for implementing the support and interventions needed for a moratorium on suspensions, expulsions, and in-school arrests for pre-K through 4th grade? How will you fund these supports, and who will be responsible for the implementation?
Well, thank you so much for the question, and I want to thank NOAA for your tireless efforts to ensure that our city has a conscience. And before I jump into answering your question with specificity, as I know Ms. Linda would like me to do, I do want to, I want to remind us of, what Dr. Martin Luther King once said, and he said that there comes a time when silence is betrayal, and that our lives begin to end the day that we become silent about those things that matter. In the end, we'll be remembered not by the words of our enemies, but by the silence of our friends. And I want to say that NOAA has been a friend to the city by bringing voice to some of the issues that we know we must address if we're truly going to be a great city. So I thank you for that word. Specifically, as we look at reducing or eliminating suspensions, particularly at elementary schools, but reducing suspensions within the district, particularly looking at African American students. I mean, we have taken this work to heart. We took a team to Harvard this summer for a program called the Public Education Leadership Project, and there we specifically framed our problem, as while only 41.9% of our student population is African American, 67% of our suspensions are African Americans. Therefore, African American students are subjected to significant loss of its instructional time at higher rates than other student groups. Specifically, African American students currently exhibit lower reading levels, lower ACT scores, higher rates of chronic absenteeism, and ultimately lower graduation rates. Additionally, the district has not provided clear expectations and options in lieu of suspension. So we wholeheartedly accepted the responsibility that we must do something because what we're doing is not working. And in this context, it presents a unique opportunity for us to deeply examine the impact of our instructional and disciplinary practices on disparities in student outcomes and engagement. And we developed a theory of action, and then this theory is where the specificity comes in, but it also is a clear acknowledgement of some of the resources that we must put in place to really address this issue. But we said that if we develop socially and emotionally supportive learning environments and ensure that principals, teachers, and staff are trained and supported to become self-aware and recognize implicit bias. Right? So we recognize we have to provide support for people to recognize that they may come with bias that might impact the performance of kids. And we said, and if teachers are trained and coached and supported regarding instructional practices that effectively engage students and improve relationship building between teachers and students. So we said we need to make sure we help teachers understand their students, where they are, and how to build real substantive relationships with them. And if we ensure that principals, teachers, and staff are equipped in supporting the implementation of equitable disciplinary practices, that they recognize that there's a problem with who they're suspending, how they're suspending, and potentially why they're suspending them. And if we ensure that students are coached and supported to become self-aware and use skills to self-regulate their emotions and behaviors, so that's the investment in the restorative practices, the investment in the trauma-informed care, and the investments in the social, emotional foundations and learning work that needs to happen. And if we provide opportunities for students and families, particularly African American families, to have voice in shaping their school culture, recognizing that students may be reacting to something that's happening in schools, and we've got to take time to listen and understand their voices, then we feel we can improve educational outcomes by reducing the lost instructional time and eliminating the disparities that exist. So when we came back to the district, the specific concrete actions that we have taken thus far include a district-wide rollout of something that we call multi-tiered systems of support. Essentially, we're saying, well, we've got to invest in making sure we're focusing on high-quality first instruction. And we get that right. But then we recognize that there are students who won't get it the first time, and we have to do things to provide additional supports, not only for academics, but in terms of emotional learning. We said that we have to look at the policy proposal for the elimination of suspensions at the elementary level. So at Harvard, we spent a lot of time acknowledging that that was something that we could control. But then we had to talk about how we go about doing it, because it's simple to just remove a policy. But if you remove a policy without addressing the mindset of the adults and putting resources in place to do something, when you take those suspensions away, you will create a cultural war within the system that we don't want. We want to make sure that we train staff to know what to do, and we give them the resources to be able to do it effectively as we work to implement that. But we acknowledge that that work must happen. We also talked about the establishment of and communication of key priorities for the district. So we actually narrowed down, at the school level, we had schools focusing on 15 things. And when we came back, we said, you know what, we got to make first things first and really prioritize. So we narrowed our focus for this year in terms of the resource and what we expect for schools to do 3 simple things. We need to improve literacy, because we have boldly proclaimed that we're going to double the amount of kids reading on grade level by 3rd grade by 2025. So that's one goal that we've set targets to do. Secondly, we said we need to make sure we improve attendance rates. And then third, we said we have to tackle the suspension piece. So, and particularly looking at African American students. So those are the 3 goals that we came back and reprioritized the district around, and we're in the process right now of building the entire organization to put effort on moving on those 3 areas. And now the next step was to plan, progress monitor those KPIs, so that suspension is the 3rd priority that everybody is aware of. And we have to put things in place, because for years we've been given a lot of lip service, but we've not followed through at the school level. And that's something we will address in our implementation plans this year. And we will continue to focus on our Community Achieves work. We did last year again. Even though we cut $17 million from the budget, we did add 11 more communities in schools and 1 more Community Achieves, the wraparound supports that we know are needed that are beneficial. We have many more schools that need it, but we did dramatically increase with the dollars that we had last year, with the knowing that we must continue to do more. And lastly, we acknowledge that we need a citywide campaign for attendance. As we're talking about this citywide campaign now for suspensions, we have 43% of our kids that are chronically absent in our buildings. And you know, suspensions contribute to chronic absenteeism. And if we don't tackle that, we won't get the gains that we have. But those are the concrete steps that we're taking, and we do plan by the end of this year to not only have the policy solution, but really identify resources that we can utilize to make sure we can implement smoothly. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Joseph.
Thank you, Dr. Joseph. I do want to acknowledge that you neglected to answer specific portions of the questions regarding the timeline, the strategy.
I was looking at my timer.
Yeah, that's fine. But we will be expecting that answer in our next meeting. Okay. I am Raquel Davis, a member of Mount Zion Baptist Church. I got involved with NOAA to ensure that my community has a say in the changing canvas of Nashville. As you can see, this slide on your screen shows the suspensions for just this school year up through October 2nd. That's 32 days of suspensions for pre-K through fourth graders. African American kids comprise roughly 45% of MMPS's student population, yet they are 76% of the suspensions of elementary students. Again, that's 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds through fourth graders. The bar on the left shows the current suspension levels by race in just 32 days. Out of 160 total suspensions of these 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, and 6-year-olds through fourth graders, 121 of them were African American, 14 were Hispanic, and 25 were white. On the right, that bar on the right, assuming the same suspension rate, 722 of these 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, and 6-year-olds through fourth graders will be suspended by the end of the school year. Based on the racial disparity seen so far, that is 546 African American students. Is this how we're shaping our prisons? In the 2015-16 through 2017-18 school years, there were 15 total expulsions of these 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds through fourth graders in MMPS. 14 were black and 1 was white. In the last 2 years, there were even a few arrests of these pre-K through fourth graders. All of them were black. What is their future? How are they being programmed? Metro Nashville Police will dispute, saying that there weren't many arrests, but one child taken away in zip ties because his arms are too small for handcuffs is one too many.
So you've heard the horrific data around suspensions, expulsions, and arrests of our most vulnerable students, some as young as 4 years old. Aren't you angry? I'm incensed that we're adding the names of our youngest students to the prison rolls, with black boys and girls being added at a ridiculously high rate. The good news is that NOAA believes that we can make a difference, and you can help. Stand with us to help rebuild trust in our public school systems. Stand with us around equitable treatment of all students. Stand with us to add your voice and actions to the call to prohibit the suspensions, expulsions, and arrest of our babies. Now that you're standing, what can you do? Call and email your school board member. Attend the Tuesday, October 13th school board meeting. Look in your program for more details. Lend your voice, your feet, and hands to help save our babies. And stop sending our youngest students out of school in zip ties only because their arms are too small for handcuffs. It's just the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So there's a lot to cover with criminal justice in Nashville. We know we got started about 10 minutes late. We love to stay on time, but we are going to ask if you will please stay with us. We have one last presentation around criminal justice as we wrap up. So thank you for your time.
So I'm Kyle Mothershead. I'm the other co-chair of the task force with Ms. Robinson. I'm a member of First Unitarian Universalist. We're going to turn now to police reform. We're going to hear a brief testimonial from Andrea Miller, who's a victim of Metro Police misconduct. We'll get updates on body cameras, mental health training at the police department, and a study by the New York University Policing Project, which has been looking at traffic stops and race disparities. And then we'll have some questions for the mayor.
Good afternoon. On August 2011, I was driving home from work. When I got to my street, I saw a police officer at the stop sign. Once I turned into the cul-de-sac, I noticed in my rear view that he was making a U-turn and he was behind me. So I made a conscious decision to pull into my driveway. Now, before this officer got to me, I had my door open, and his first question was, "Why didn't you stop?" And my answer to him was, "Because I live here." And his next question to me was, "How do I know you weren't trying to run?" And I'm thinking, this is a dead end, where am I going to go? So he arrested me for running a stop sign, but on paper, he said that I was reckless driving and I was resisting arrest. I had to report to the sheriff's office weekly while my charges pended. It took 1.5 years to get my charges dropped and 5 years to resolve my civil rights suit. Before that night, I have never had any issues with law enforcement. That night changed me. So I decided to move out of Nashville because I don't trust the police department. My settlement, it was great, but justice was not done because nothing happened to him.
I'm Jane Borm with Christ Church Cathedral, and I want us today to talk about body and dash cams. Let's go to the timeline. October 2016, Mayor Barry commits Nashville to buy body cams. There was a commitment. You might say, we got engaged. We're still engaged, Nashville. But is Metro government still engaged with us? March 2017, Council votes for immediate purchase of body cams with deployment in 8 police precincts where crime is highest. You'll see here Police Chief Anderson talking about his promise to get those body cams installed. Next slide.
So I would say a best case scenario over the course of 1 year, starting July 1 of this year.
Well, that was a year ago. And July 26, 2018, Daniel Hambrick is shot and killed in one of those 8 high crime precincts where the body cams were supposed to be deployed. But still, no body cams. Engagements are promises, y'all. And at this moment, promises are not being kept by our city. When promises are not kept, trust goes out the window. So, is our engagement broken? Have we been jilted? Or can promises made about body cams still be fulfilled? Stay tuned.
I am Pat Halper with the Temple Congregation Ojibwe Shalom. Crisis intervention teams are specialized units within police departments trained to address the unique challenges to law enforcement posed by people with mental health issues. CITs, as they are referred to, are made up of officers who volunteer to be part of a team, much like officers volunteer to be part of a SWAT, a canine unit, a mounted police unit, or any other specialized unit. They volunteer because they care about working with and serving this segment of a city's population. Crisis intervention teams have proven to successfully reduce arrest of people with mental health issues and therefore keep them out of jail. They also reduce officer injuries and injuries to the person with mental illness and lead to successful interventions. Creating a CIT unit is not only about the training, it's also about the officer's desire to be part of a CIT that makes a crisis intervention team work. Police departments in all major cities across Tennessee have created CITs. All urban cities except Nashville. Metro Nashville Police Department has been asked to develop a CIT team, but has declined.
So when we initially imagined this panel, what we'd hoped to do was show off all of the work that our social science partners have done in Nashville. But as often is the case, ambitious plans run into real-world realities, and in this case, the real-world reality is that we'd love to present our results to the folks in Nashville first. This is ultimately their project, and they're going to be the ones making this decision, and so we want to make sure that the local stakeholders, from the mayor's office to the department to the communities, get to see these results before we present them to all of you.
Hi, my name is Tillman Payne. I'm a local attorney and a volunteer with the NOAA Criminal Justice Task Force. I, along with other NOAA members, met with the mayor's senior staff advisor for public safety and justice policy, Marcus Floyd, recently, and although the full report has not been released, the mayor and his staff have been briefed on the progress of the NYU policing project and provided preliminary information. That information suggests that the results of the report, when fully released, will support the concerns raised by the community of racial disparity in police stops. And this will add value to the discussion going forward for greater community involvement in policing policy and practices.
Good evening. I am Phyllis Hildreth. I am represented at NOAA by my church, Clark Memorial United Methodist Church, and I stand here as a Metro Human Relations Commissioner, voluntarily serving this city, completing my second term. On Monday, October 1st of this year, Mayor Briley briefed the Metro Human Relations Commission on the status of the policing project. He told us that their data analysis of racial disparity in Metro policing traffic stops was complete, that the policing project had provided him with recommendations for changes in policing practices with respect to traffic stops, and that, according to my notes, quote, their recommendations will be implemented by the police department one way or another, unquote.
And now we'll have a word of support from Council Lady at Large, Erica Gilmore. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening to you. Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Dr. Joseph. Good evening, NOAA. I stand before you. I am Council Lady Gilmore. I stand with this mic with a simple message that we are better together. Whether it's dash cameras, we are better together. Whether it's driving while black, we are better together. Whether it is a community oversight board, we are better together. On all criminal justice issues, I would like for you to say it. I mean NOAA, the city council, all residents, whether you're black, white, Jew, Muslim, Latino, new immigrant, rich, poor, or homeless. We are better together. Thank you so much, and God bless you.
Mayor Briley, if you could. We gave the mayor the questions last week. You can see them up there. What I want to say is a lot of us have known you, Mayor Briley, and respected you for a very long time. And we know you've been dealt a difficult hand with this job. But some of your choices since you took the job, especially with what's going on with this policing project, are making us wonder who we elected. Are you the same David Briley that we've admired for so long? You and I both know what's been said by you and your staff in semi-private meetings with NOAA and Metro Human Relations and maybe other groups. Please just tell everybody. Just share it with the community. Tell us what you know, and tell us what your plan is for how we're going to get to the 21st century policing department that we know we need. Thank you.
Do you want me to answer the question you sent me, or that question? I'm just asking. The question up here?
Question up here.
Okay, thank you. So the issue that we all know, understand, and believe in is that trust between community and the police is essential to the success of this community. I'm totally committed to that, absolutely committed to that. What that means is that in the coming months and years, Nashville is going to have a 21st century police department. And a 21st century police department uses body cams, has citizens oversight, and is focused on community policing. That is where we are going to be as a community. Now, along the way, getting there, as Kyle pointed out, we're not always going to agree on exactly the pace or the direction to getting there. And this is a moment where, because we have to be a data-driven society where we make decisions based on real information that is complete, the policing projects report will not be available until November 19th for everybody to review. However, what I would suggest anybody who is interested in information about policing between now and November 6th, and by the way, vote before November 6th or on November 6th, is that it is fair and reasonable for you to rely on the Driving While Black study. The policing project was not brought into Nashville in any respect to contradict or overrule. It was brought in to supplement. And in the meantime, if it is important to anybody in our community in terms of deciding how they're going to vote on Amendment 1, to look at the history of policing in our community, pick up Driving While Black, read it, and rely on it as you make your decision.
We'll take that. Thank you, sir.
This is you.
Stay here.
This is you.
Okay, stay here.
You have publicly indicated on multiple occasions that your desire is for Nashville to have a school system where all students are prepared to contribute to and even excel in the IT city that Nashville is today. Will you commit to working meaningfully with Dr. Sean Joseph, Director of Schools, to fund MNPS's top priorities, including restorative practices and other positive discipline methods?
Yes.
Can you tell us?
We're running late. Do you need more than yes?
Yes, sir, please do. Can you explain that a little bit for us, please?
All right. I thought I was just supposed to say yes or no. Sure. I mean, Dr. Joseph and I are partners. I am working with him across the board. We meet monthly. I support him in his endeavors to make improvements when it comes to Metro Nashville Public Schools. I enjoy working with the school board because I think they're critical partners in terms of moving us forward. You'll see I've spent time at Fall Hamilton and Pearl Cone because they are two of the leading schools in our town when it comes to focusing on social and emotional learning, not just thinking about how we're interacting with the students, but thinking about how the staff interacts with itself, how the teachers interact with the principals, how the principals interact with Dr. Joseph and his staff. So I'm committed to working with him in any respect we possibly can to make improvements on this, because when you look, for example, at expulsions, we know that that is a tragic moment in our community, one that has to come to an end.
The key word there is meaningfully, to ensure that there's adequate funding for MNPS schools. Will you commit to funding the 9 mental health and nursing positions needed to staff the new Mental Health Crisis Treatment Center opening in 2019?
So the treatment center was, I'm just learning a little bit about this, and just through reading the question, I don't think they have actually made the request to us for funding for the 9 individuals yet. So this facility opened as a result of what was called a PIP. And that was an effort in Metro government to bring different parties from different areas together and encourage collaboration, because cross-agency collaboration is really important to the success of a lot of endeavors like this, because this is not really just a mental health center, it's really a policing center, it's across the board. So if there's a request for 9 members, we will work with them to find the funding to do it. But I'm going to push to get more state funding than local, because this is really truly a state issue, as much more so than it is a local issue. And if they would just expand Medicaid in our country, in our state, this would not be an issue for us at all. But we will make sure, one way or another, that they have the adequate resources to operate this facility at full staff.
We'll take that. Thank you, Mayor Briley.
Thank you. I thought there might be another trick question. Is there a trick question too? No trick question. All right. Stick a forward here.
Good evening. My name is Terry Clayton. I'm a member of the Criminal Justice Task Force and the co-chairman of the Policing Subcommittee. I practice law here in Nashville, and over the years I've seen an increase in the number of stops by police officers and the searches that are normally, a lot of them are unlawful. The citizens of Nashville has gone through the laborious task of having a referendum for a Citizens Oversight Board placed on the November 6th election ballot. NOAA has already gone on record in support of the Citizens Oversight Board referendum. Referendum number 1. Now, we have 5 citizens who will come to you and tell you why they are supporting or voting for the Citizens Oversight Board referendum number 1.
Hello, my name is Sue Caudell, and I'm a member of Eastwood Christian Church. I'm voting for the COB because it will provide accountability and transparency for our citizens and police.
I'm Monica Rainey. I'm voting for the Community Oversight Board because accountability builds trust, and mutual trust makes police officers and our citizens safer.
My name is Dave Zelensky. I'm a member of Congregation Micah, and I voted for the COB because I believe that the entire community needs to have a voice in police practices and policing policies. And rather than do it on the NYU Policing Project's timeline or the City Council's timeline or the police chief's timeline, I think we should do it on our timeline.
Hello, my name is Amanda Lucas, and I voted for the COB because as a former law enforcement officer myself, I support our police department. Rebuilding trust with the citizens of Nashville by ensuring that they're held accountable will keep both the community and officers safer.
My name is Monica Blake, and I am
a current Metro Nashville police officer. Thank you. I've served this city for nearly 15 years, and I can tell you from all of my personal experiences, there is no real accountability or real transparency within the police department, especially among the supervisors and the administration. I've made numerous complaints, formal complaints of serious misconduct to the police administration and to the mayor's office, all of which have fallen on deaf ears. My story is just one of many, but the culture of intimidation and retaliation in the police department has silenced so many officers. This needs to change, and it needs to change now. And these are my personal opinions, not the opinion of my employer.
All right. I don't have to ask you whether you're supporting the COB referendum number 1 or not. By those applause we just heard, we know you all support the COB. At this time, we'll hear from Reverend Herbert Lester, the pastor of Clark Memorial United Methodist Church, who will say a few words about NOAA's Integrated Voter Engagement Project.
As Terry said, I am Herbert Lester, and I serve Clark Memorial United Methodist Church. And I'm sure all of you realize that exercising the right to vote in our democracy is an exercise of power. And power is so good, everybody ought to have some. For that reason, NOAA has joined other Gamaliel affiliates and organizations in this state in year-round, nonpartisan, integrated voter engagement, IVE for short. IVE seeks to add new people to voter registration rolls, educate voters about election issues, make sure new and unlikely voters actually show up at the polls and cast their ballots, while working to ensure that misinformation and intimidation don't stop people from voting. Through IVE, we hope to develop new local leaders and involve more people in shaping the public policy decisions that affect all of our lives. We also seek to integrate voter education with our nonpartisan issue campaigns, which will build NOAA's capacity to reach out to potential voters and thereby increase NOAA's capacity to win issue campaigns. I tell you, power is so good, everybody ought to have some. As we prepare for midterm elections on November 6th, using all the technology and training available to us, we have focused our IVE efforts in Metro Council Districts 21 and 22 in the North Nashville area, with training sessions followed by door-to-door canvassing, phone banking, and texting, while at the same time developing community hubs where people learn they can come for information, inspiration, organization, and direction. Power is so good, everybody ought to have some. And now I'd like to introduce and bring to you Tanya Debro, leader of our IVE team and chair of our planning committee for this event this afternoon.
Hello, everyone. After this, we can all get up and go. So I'm going to ask you all to stand up right now. Get your knees ready. Get the Tin Man out your knees. NOAA stands for Nashville Organized for Action. Action is a verb. We got to move. So what we're getting ready to do now, we're getting ready to move. We're going to march like we in the army. And we want to go left, right, 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 left. There you go. Keep going. Y'all going to repeat after me. All right? Here we go. I don't know what you've been told. Voting is worth more than gold. It gives the power to you and me to build a real democracy. Left, right, left, right, left, right, left. We the people are watching to see exactly what they bring to Nashville for our benefit. If nothing voted out, they'll get left, right, left, right, left, right, left. We have to pay attention well and call out the untruths they tell. Accountability's a must if they want the public's trust. We are gonna